Good morning, everybody. All right, I'm going to start it out here. Just kind of go through a few housekeeping tips. We do have some people still connecting to audio, so if you are having issues, please feel free to type it in the chat box there, and we'll try to touch base with you and give you a hand. First of all, we'd like to thank everybody for coming to our first session of our new virtual user conference. Today we're presenting Sage tips and tricks, but we'll like to start with a few housekeeping things. This is being recorded, so we will be putting this on our website a little later. All attendees will be in mute during the whole session, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat section, and we'll throw those out at the end of the meeting. I think that's all for housekeeping, and now we'll jump right into the session here. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Jessie Braun. She's a consultant here. She specializes in sales and implementations. You might recognize her voice from some of our training videos as well. I know I've learned quite a bit from her, so I know you're going to learn a lot from her. And with that, Jessie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if we're ready to go. Make sure I share the correct screen. You should be seeing my slideshow here, Sage Tips and Tricks. So just a quick introduction of myself. So as Kelly said, I'm a sales and implementation consultant here. I've been with Vrakas for about 3 years, but come from a long background of using Sage as an end user. And, you know, in that process have learned so many different tips and tricks over the years, learn things, you know, as Sage releases new information. And so I'm excited to be sharing this with you. I have a ton of content, so hopefully I'm going to be able to get through everything, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. I do just want to move my Zoom meeting to a different screen here. So done. All right, so let's start with what is Sage 100 Cloud? So if you're here, I'm guessing you're probably pretty familiar with Sage 100, but I do want to always define what Sage 100 Cloud is, because contrary to the name, it's not a cloud product. It's a cloud capable product. So Sage 100 Cloud allows you to be connected to cloud products like Sage CRM or Sage Contact. And you can also have it on a virtual server or something like an Azure environment. So it is that kind of cloud capable, but not natively cloud. You can still have it on your own server. It's also the subscription product for Sage. So I would say the majority of our clients are already on the subscription product here. And what this means is you get some access to some new features. Sage wants to promote moving to the subscription product, and so they're going to give you some new features. I'll go through on the next slide some of the new features by version, but just a reminder that you might actually get new modules with it as well, things like Visual Integrator, Custom Office, and Sage Intelligence Designer. Those are all modules that you may not have had access to with your old, perpetual version that may be available in the subscription version. So let's take a look at some of the new features. You can see that as of the 2016 version, they started adding exclusive Sage 100 Cloud features. And as time went along, they increased the number of features that were available innately in Sage 100 Cloud. I'm just going to mark out some of the notable ones here, especially ones in newer versions that you may or may not have heard about yet. So we have the ability to combine multiple sales orders on one invoice. This is especially useful if you have customers who place, an order with one item, with another order with one item, and so on, but you really just want to have one invoice and one payment from that customer. You can take all of those multiple sales orders with the same criteria, combine them onto one invoice so that it's just cleaner and a little bit more streamlined. They have the opportunity to do automated bank feeds. So you can connect your Sage bank reconciliation to your bank. And it will actually go through and with some markers of, on your bank statement, it will automatically clear certain transactions for you. So automated bank feeds came with one of the newer versions and with Sage 100 Cloud. we have inactive or restricted warehouses. And for this one, I actually want to go to Sage and show you this feature because it is pretty cool. So here in our inventory module under warehouse code maintenance, if I pull up a warehouse, we've got our warehouse status. Again, this is a newer feature. We can have an active status, we can have an inactive status, or a restricted status. So inactive is going to make it unavailable in any version. Restricted, if we choose this, allows us to choose which types of transactions we would like to allow in that warehouse. This is perfect for a situation where maybe you've got a quarantine. You can't ship anything out of this warehouse because something is locked down and you just can't ship anything to customers from here. But you might still want to take sales orders. You might still want to do purchase order receipts. So you can choose which transactions you want to allow or disallow. You can also have a restricted start and end date as well, so you can have it go for a specific period of time. All right, back to the PowerPoint. So we also have AP check reversal. So this is a one-click button that allows you to reverse an AP check. This is a lot easier than the old method, which was multiple steps. In the 2020 version, we have lot serial expiration dates. So this is a big one. This is something that we've always had to do kind of a workaround for using a user-defined field to create an expiration date for your lot serial. Now with the new version in 2020, that lot serial expiration date comes innate to the service. So that's kind of nice. And then also we have the ability to combine multiple purchase orders on one receipt of goods or receipt of invoice. So these are some of the new features available on the Sage 100 Cloud, and I wanted to point those out to you. So let's talk about a few different ways that you can modify your Sage screen to be exactly just for you, for each user. We've got our user preferences. So in Sage, under user settings, we can do a whole lot of customizations by the user. We can change from standard to classic view, and I'll actually get to that a little bit on the next slide. We can use enter like a tab key. So if you're doing a lot of data entry and you want to use the enter button instead of the tab button, you can make that decision here. We can imply decimal points. We can display reduction amounts in red. We can just make it look exactly how you like it. One of the favorite things I have on our user settings is the ability to change our default report preview zoom. What this is going to do is, if you've run a report out of Sage, you've noticed that generally speaking, it comes up really tiny. The font is really, really small. You can change the zoom to automatically be at 150%. Or 200%, or whatever size works best for you. So that anytime you run a standard report or a custom report, it automatically comes up in that zoomed in. We also have the ability to change things on the View tab. And again, I'm going to pop back and forth into Sage here just to demonstrate things as well as use this slideshow. So I want to come over to the View tab and show you a few of the different things we can do. So you'll notice here that my font is actually a little bit bigger than the standard. That's because of our application scaling. So if I change back to our default, you can see that the font is really small, and actually the windows as well. So if I open up item maintenance, the windows and the font in those windows is a little bit smaller. If I change my application scaling back to medium, which I find easier to see on these Zoom meetings, which is why I started with it, the font is bigger here. And if I open up item maintenance again, you can see the screen is bigger, the font is bigger. This is a new feature that I find a lot of users really love because that default font is quite small. It does depend on your screen resolution. So, you may drop down this menu and see that you can't do medium, large, or extra large, and that really depends on the screen resolution of the monitor that you're using. So just keep that in mind. We also have the ability to sort our module lists, module menus, and module menu tasks. So let me show you what that does here. If I click the Sort Module List button, you can see that my modules actually sorted in alphabetical order. This can be a great thing, or it can actually be a problem, right? So sorting your list alphabetically, again, it's great, except Sage has tried to lay things out in a logical manner for you. Down at the bottom, you know, at the very end, we have all of our manufacturing modules. So bill of materials, work order, Sage 100 manufacturing, if you do have that. Those modules all write up into our sales order and purchase order module. Sales order and purchase order module write up into inventory, and sales order and purchase order also write up into accounts payable and accounts receivable, which write up to general ledger. So again, Sage has tried to lay things out in a pretty logical manner, and sorting it, you know, alphabetically can kind of defeat the purpose of that. But we do have a lot of users who really like it. Obviously, they added it as a feature. So it's there for you if you like it. We can also sort the menus within the modules. So if I click here, you can see it's sorted this alphabetically. This one I don't like so much because, you know, you don't have main up at the top, and this is where all of the meat of your modules are. But you can sort the tasks within the modules as well, and that'll sort alphabetically. And again, the thing you want to keep in mind here is that Sage does try to give you a logical procession through the module, through the menus. So for example, in item maintenance, we start with creating our items, item maintenance. We've got our inquiry screens for items and lots. We've got our actual data processing, the transaction entry. When you're done with a transaction entry, you should run your transaction register. And then you would want to finish with your daily transaction register. So again, Sage tries to give that logical order. That's something you want to keep in mind if you choose to sort. I don't like to sort, so I'm going to keep it the way that it is. Another feature that we have in views is the ability to change the background colors, the background theme. Maybe this white is too strong and you just can't look at it every day. If we click here, we can change the theme to this sort of darker color background. We've got a lot of different choices that we can choose from, so just kind of play around with that. I like to stick with my typical Sage green background just because it's what I'm used to. But please feel free, you know, play around with that, see what you like best. This is only available in the standard version of the screen. So if you are on that old classic view, you won't have access to any of these features, including the application scaling and the sorting. Which actually brings me to my next point, standard versus classic view. So you can see here on the left, we've got our standard view. On the right is that classic view. The classic view has that, you know, sort of menued tree system. This is pretty old fashioned, and this may break some hearts out there, or it may make a lot of people happy. Who knows? The classic version of the desktop is going away with the 2020 version of Sage. So as of the 2020 version of Sage, you only have access to that standard view. Sorry, everyone who's upset. Yay for everyone who really likes that standard view and wants all their users to use the standard view. So the next thing that we can do, we can change our background of our company. So the background color of our company. Where is this useful? This could be really useful if you have two different company codes that you use. Let's say you've got you know, a main company and then you have like a real estate company. And you want to be sure that you don't accidentally enter transactions into the wrong company. If you change the background color of your company, and I'll show you what that looks like, you'll be able to very, very easily tell that you are in the alternate company. So, you know, if I open a screen here, like item maintenance, you can see it's this kind of white background, totally normal. I'm actually going to do this for a different company code, show you that. Let me pull up a different company. All right, so This is a backup company that I used for a Sage Basics webinar. I'm going to come over to the theme tab, and I can choose my theme code of Classic. This background color becomes available when we choose that theme code of Classic. We can choose our background color, just the background, the actual frame of the screen that you're on, or both. I'm going to go ahead and choose the background. It's going to be very bright, but this is an example, so I want you guys to see, just how different they look. So we can go ahead and choose a color. Let's go ahead with a lovely pumpkin orange for fall. And now if I switch my company code over to this Basics company, and I open up my item maintenance screen, you can see super bright, super orange. Immediately, you know that you're in the alternative company code. So in addition to if you have two different company codes, this can be really useful if you have a test company. Maybe you like to play around with your transactions and pricing setup or something. You've got a backup company that you use for that testing. You can change the background color so that you don't accidentally enter transactions into that test company. All right. Some other features available in Sage. We've got spell check. So if you haven't seen this before, you turn this on in the system configuration. You would enable that enable our spell check. And most of the free format fields that you have in here, things like comments, things like text that you have on a sales order, it's going to do spell check on that. And it's just a normal spell check. You can right click on that word to edit and choose from a suggested list of words. You can add that word to your dictionary so that it never pops up again for you, or you can just ignore it. So spell check is a feature that is available with those newer versions. We can also set up favorites. So in the old Classic view, we had My Tasks, or you could drag and drop things to the toolbar on the top. In the standard format, we now have our favorites. And I really like favorites. I think they're a great way for you to actually set up a process flow. You can see I've got some of them set up here. I've got one for purchasing that has purchase order entry, followed by printing, then our receipt of goods, the receipt register update, receipt of invoice, and then receipt register update again. So it's a full process flow. Setting up your favorites is super, super simple. All you have to do is drag and drop. So you can see as I start to drag here, it gives us a little line. I don't need Task Scheduler on there, so I can right click, I can delete. We can right click, we can insert a separator. So if you have multiple different process flows that you want to add here, you can insert that separator and kind of go from there. We can have external shortcuts. They can be shortcuts to documentation that is saved out somewhere. It can be a shortcut to a web browser somewhere. Setting up these favorites, it really gives you a lot of flexibility in not just Sage tasks, but also external tasks as well. We can set up folders, and I've set up these folders just as a title basically, but you can also click in and have the whole process right within the folder. So that is the favorites. Again, that replaces My Tasks on the Classic desktop, and where you used to have, where you could drag and just have the little shortcuts along the top. So that's in the favorites over here. Enhanced autocomplete. So this is something that I like to pause on and really think about before moving forward on setting this up with clients. The reason for that is we can set up this enhanced autocomplete. All you have to do is build this search index. And once you build the search index, it allows you to search by a number of fields. This can be good and bad. For customers and vendors, when you type into, let's say the customer bar, if you type in anything, Amer, A-M-E-R, Amer, right? And you're looking for a company called American Way or something. When you type that in, it's going to search all fields, name, number, all the address fields, including city, state, all the phone number fields, comment, and sort field. So it gives us probably a little bit too much for options. Let me just show you what that looks like. So again, if I type in A-M-E-R, you can see it's found ABS. Well, why is that there? That doesn't have American in the name. Okay, well, I don't see it here in the name, but if I come over to the additional tab, oh, look, the sort field has AMER in it. And so it's found more maybe than you want to actually find. There's no way to turn this search index on just for customers or just for items. It's kind of all or nothing. If you did turn this on for items, it would search by the item code, the description, the extended description, the product line, the unit of measure, and the primary vendor. So really consider before you turn this search index on for your autocomplete. You still have the basic. So this is something I do want to point out. Obviously, I've got the search index turned on here, so it's not perfect. But if I type in AMER, if I didn't have the autocomplete on, it would pop up American Business Futures and American Concrete Service because the name of the company starts with American or AMER. So you still have access to an autocomplete. It's only going to search though off of the customer name, the vendor name, or the item description. So that's the search index, sort of a bit of a complicated thing. And that's the reason that I really like to make sure people understand it before you go ahead and build that search index. You build the search index here in the Library Master Utilities. We just click this button. It runs through a whole indexing thing where it looks at all of these different fields and creates sort of a matrix that the system will search on. You have to continue to build the search index every time you make changes. You can set this up with a task scheduler. You know, again, I don't have a lot of clients who have used this because the drawback of too much information. If you do build the search index and you need to turn it off, give us a call. It's not as easy as just clicking a button to turn it off. We have to go into some of the data files and remove a particular file. So if you've done this, if you don't like it, give us a call. We can certainly help you with that. So that's probably enough on search, the enhanced autocomplete. Let's move on. This is a newer feature that I love to tell people about. This is our daily transaction register auto posting. As of the 2019 version, we can set up in role maintenance to automatically update that daily transaction register. So if we were in our sales order screen, when you're finished with all of your invoices for the day, you would run your daily sales reports and updates. After that's done, it prompts you to run your daily transaction register. The daily transaction register shows you all of the general ledger postings that have happened because of this. So it is an important report because of that. It shows you the general ledger postings. However, if you've got a lot of users using the system, if it's just every single time you just click yes and update and you don't even print the report and nobody really needs to see it, that's where turning on the auto posting of the daily transaction register is going to be helpful. You can set this up by role. So you can say for particular users, I do want them to have this auto post available versus other users, maybe they do want to see auto posting or they do want to see the daily transaction register. So you would want to turn off the auto posting. You don't want to auto post. So again, set it up by role. And you can also turn this on or off by module. So you can decide, maybe I just want to show this to have it auto update when I'm doing accounts payable because I know what's happening in accounts payable. I don't need to see anything else. So again, set it up by module, set it up by role. But keep in mind that you won't see the report of the general ledger postings, that may be an issue for some people. Especially if you're newer to Sage 100, we always recommend that you take a look at the daily transaction register and really understand what the postings are and what is happening. I'm going to take a drink of water, everyone. Thank you. All right. So up next, we're going to talk about buttons. We've got a lot of buttons in Sage. They do a lot of different things. Some of them you're probably really familiar with, and some of them you might have never noticed before. So let's kind of go through them. We've got our very standard, typical magnifying glass. This is available for all of our lookups. And takes you to that, what's called the advanced lookup engine. This is where we can customize our views. And I do have a ton of content to cover here, but if I have a little time at the end, I'll show you those custom lookups a little bit. So the magnifying glass, that's our lookups, our search throughout the whole system. This little button with the number and the arrow, it's the new record. So when you're setting up a new sales order, it can, take whatever the next number is that's available in the system for you. Maybe you've got customers set up that way where you can say, oh, give me just the next customer number, whatever is next in the list. So that's the button that you're going to see for that. This one's pretty self-explanatory. First, previous, next, last. These are arrow button. You can use it to navigate through things. We've got our memo button. One thing to note here is that if it is yellow, that means there's a memo that's available for whatever that task is. If you're in customer maintenance, it would be a memo associated with the customer. If you're in a sales order, it would be a memo associated with that sales order. So memo button, and when it's highlighted, there are available memos. Our hyperlink button. I used salesperson as an example, but anywhere in the system you see a blue highlighted field with an underline, it's a hyperlink to a related task. In this case, this would be to our salesperson maintenance. And when you click that record, it's going to take you out to the salesperson record and show you information about that, whether it's the, address information or, the commission percentage or whatever that you have set up for that salesperson. We've got our calculator button. So the calculator button is available on most number fields in the system. And one of the cool features that I think not everybody always knows about is that you can click the calculator button, it pulls up your calculator, you can do your entry, and there's a return button on the calculator. If you click return, it will take that final value of whatever you've calculated in the calculator and enter it into the field that you click the calculator button on. So super useful if you, let's say, are doing cash receipts and you wanted to add up a whole bunch of different invoices together to make sure that you get the total quantity of the cash receipt correct. You could, use your number pad in the calculator, add, click the return button, and then it just actually fills the value into the field of the payment amount. We've got our change view button. And I'll actually show this one to you on the next slide, the next topic that we're going to look at. But this allows you to swap to an alternate view or an alternate analysis. So you might see this, I'm going to go back to the customer record or an item record. If you have a, analysis tab that says, well, this is how much you sold last year, and this is the margin, and a lot of other information, you can actually click the change view button and it might do a comparison of, this year versus prior year. So kind of play around with those buttons whenever you see them. It's fun to see, the different views that are available to you. We also have our drill down. So whenever you see the green arrow followed by 2 white arrows, that's our drill down. You are going to see this all over the place in the system. You might see it related to an invoice. You might see within that invoice it related to the general ledger postings that are associated with that invoice. Whenever you want more information about a topic that you're in, look for that button, you'll be able to drill down and see what more additional information there is. Often, in addition to that drill down button, you can double click, and the double click will take you into that drill down as well. So with Sage, there's always multiple ways to do things, and this is one of those multiple ways. We've got our binocular button. So the binoculars, they change the selection criteria on the screen that you're in. So for example, if you're in inventory under the transactions tab, when you click the binoculars button, it probably has a default that shows you just the current period's transactions. And so you want to keep in mind, well, if I want to see transactions going back quite a ways, click the binoculars button and clear out that selection to show me all of the transactions. On some of the screens, if the binoculars is red, that means that there's a selection that exists. This doesn't apply in item maintenance because the default is to have that selection of whatever your current period is. We've got our flashlight button. The flashlight shows you records that are already created or in process. So let's say you're in cash receipts. You've got your magnifying glass that allows you to select your customer. And next to that magnifying glass is the flashlight. If we select the flashlight, it will show you all of the cash receipts that you have already done in this run of cash receipts, all of the things that are, currently in progress for your cash receipts. So look out for that flashlight. And then this one, again, pretty self-explanatory. That's the Excel button. I think everybody recognizes that. And it allows you to export screens and lists over to Excel. Okay, now I'm going for coffee. All right. So we've got our primary versus our secondary grid, and I'm actually going to go over to Sage and we're going to look at this one a little bit more in depth. What do I have open here? Customer maintenance. Let's close that out. So for this, I'm going to open up sales order entry. I'm going to pull up any order here. Again, this is a test system, so none of this is real data. And when we're on our lines tab, you can see we've got two grids of data here. This one is called the primary grid. This is called the secondary grid. And editing these it's very simple. You just kind of drag and drop information between the two. So let's say I wanted to actually put my comment up here kind of at the end with the extension, just drag and drop. And now you can see that the comment is up on that screen. Alternative goes here, we can drag and drop our unit of measure. Maybe that's not an important field to us because we sell everything in eaches. We can drag and drop that unit of measure down below. We have a lot of fields available to us here. So, there's a lot of possibilities of things that you can drag and drop up to the primary or to the secondary. But maybe you've got too much information to really be in this top grid. You really want to see a lot more information about all of this stuff at the same time as you're seeing your primary grid. That's where our change view button comes into play from the last slide. So we click change view, and now our secondary grid is over to the right next to our primary grid. And it allows us to see more information at one time. Not only are we seeing the stuff in the primary grid, the item code, the description, etc. We're also seeing our warehouse. We're seeing the GL postings that are available. Is this a dropship order? So changing the view here using that view button allows us to alter the screen where it's the most useful for you. All right. So hotkeys in Sage. This, may be an important thing to you if you like to use your keyboard, if you do a ton of data entry. Having these shortcuts can be really, really useful if you use your software that way. I know, in more modern software, the idea is use the mouse, use clicking, use less keyboard, but some people are still a lot more comfortable using old-fashioned, kind of data entry ways. And I know that I do too. When I was, doing processing, doing sales order entry, I absolutely used, the number pad as well as the tab key or the enter key, and, did my data entry that way. So it's definitely a, normal way of doing things. But here are some hotkeys that may help you with that data entry. So obviously tab and enter. Tab moves you to the next field, enter moves you to the next logical field. I'm not going to cover every single one of these just because, some of them are pretty self-explanatory, but it is good for you to have a whole list of these. I do like some of these, control insert, control delete. So if you're in a data entry grid line, and let's say you have, 100 lines, and you need to, for whatever reason, delete every single line that's in there and then re-enter it. You can click the little delete button, or you can press Control Delete and get the same result. One that isn't on here that I did want to point out is the F2 button. So the F2 button is going to be your lookup button. If I come over here and put my cursor in here, I can click the magnifying glass to get my lookup, right? Or if I press the F2 button, it does the same thing. It pulls up that lookup screen. So again, if you're more used to data entry, this is a great way to do that. So these are some of the hotkeys that are available to you in Sage. So here's a big topic, Custom Office. This is a module within Sage, and it gives you a ton of different capabilities. I'm going to cover 2 of the capabilities kind of in passing because they're a huge topic and I could spend an entire session on just that. And then I'll get into one a little bit more in depth. Hopefully that will be useful to everybody to understand the capabilities and then to see one that maybe is a little more user-friendly to make changes to on your own. So in Custom Office, one of the things that we can do is create user-defined fields or user-defined tables. And I am going to come over to Sage and show you this. So in our user-defined field and table maintenance, you can see all of our modules. You can also see that we have tables that have been used recently. Again, this is my test system. I've got a lot of stuff in here. I do a lot of playing around. I do a lot of testing things for clients. So you're going to see a lot of data in here. But if I pull up our sales order header and I go to edit fields, it pulls up a whole list of user-defined fields that have been previously created. In this example, I'm going to use, we have a customer default warehouse that exists on our sales order. So maybe it's just a user-defined field. It's something that you want to always set on that sales order. It's a multi-line field, which means it's a free format. It is, type in whatever character you want there, whether it's a letter or a number. And the length is 3. It's only 3 characters long, which actually matches the warehouse field in your Sage. So we've got our customer default warehouse in our sales order header. Now, when you're done with a sales order, that sales order goes to sales order history. That sales order becomes an invoice, and that invoice becomes AR invoice history, right? And so if you enter it in one place, you don't want to have to re-enter it. You want it to go through to your history so that you can use it for analysis. We can set the system up with mapping so that when you enter information onto a sales order header, it actually flows all the way through to your AR invoice history. That's a fairly complicated process. I'm not going to go into it today. I just want to show you that that's possible. And if I pull up our history header, you can see that I have this mapped to this customer default warehouse. I have this mapped to the sales order history. Okay. So just know that's a capability that you can do, create a user-defined field, have that user-defined field flow all the way through to the history. Another thing that we can do with Custom Office in Sage is create user-defined scripts. So this is even more complicated than creating user-defined fields and tables. Scripting is going to be used in Sage as a way to automate a process that you would always do the same thing. So let's say every time you have a specific line item on an order, you've got a specific line item. When that line item comes up, you automatically want to add a miscellaneous charge to it. We can create a script that will look for that particular item or a group of items, and it will automatically insert a line for that miscellaneous charge. And this is just one example. We also can do pop-up warnings for mismatched or missing data. Let's say you want to make sure that every time somebody enters an order, you have a comment that's associated with it or a contact. We can have a pop-up come up and say, you didn't enter a comment here, go back and enter a comment. We can do things like calculate lead time. So let's say you're in a purchase order and you wanted to have a lead time set by a group of items, and you wanted it to look at what that lead time is, make the calculation and set the date to exactly what that should be based on the lead time of the item. We can do that in Sage with scripting. There's really endless opportunities here. The thing to keep in mind is that if you have a process that you can define the criteria for, and that we can set that criteria up in Sage, we can take a look at doing scripting for you. Scripting does get more complicated as we look at third-party, having third-party add-ons and things like that. But it's certainly a very cool option if you have a process that you feel should be automated. All right, now we're going to get into the more user-friendly, hands-on part, which may be a little bit more fun for everyone. We've got our customizer. So I'm going to come over to Sage and we're going to play around with customizer. So in Sage, all of our screens here, all of these screens can be customized. This can be customized by user. You can do it by company code. You can do it for all users and all company codes. We've kind of have endless possibilities. So to get to our customizer, we're going to pull up. I find this the easiest way to do it. There again, there are multiple ways always to do things, but we're going to pull up the screen that we want to edit. In this case, I want to edit the customer maintenance screen under the main tab. And you can kind of see this little outline here. I hope you can kind of see this little outline here. We want to edit the main tab. So I'm going to find a little white space in that main tab and right click. We can then go to panel settings and customizer. You can see that I've got a whole bunch of customized panels here for other company codes. And I actually have one customized for my user for the ABC company. So we're going to take a look at that one. And I apologize, this stuff popped up on the other screen, so I just kind of have to drag it over. So here's our customizer panel. It's going to allow us to make edits to this screen. Let me see if I've got I don't. So you'll notice that we've got this credit hold and credit limit. If you remember on the customer maintenance screen, that whole box was empty. Let me just show that really quickly. Pull this back up. I'll pull up the customer. And you can see this whole little box here, totally empty. There's nothing there, right? And that's because in Customizer, I don't know why it's going away now. It wasn't doing that yesterday when I was testing this, but that's okay. You can see that there's data here. And what I've done is I've hidden it. So I've said, I never use credit hold. I don't want to show it. What I did was I highlighted the field here, right click, and it takes you to the definition for this field. So if I come to the options tab, you can see I check the box that makes it hidden, makes it unavailable, and it just doesn't show. You can resize things. You can have it, anchor to the left. You can make things bigger or smaller. We can also change the text. Maybe credit hold isn't the terminology that you use. You can change that here. We can also choose to have this display on the left or the right. So we can see we've got our demo down here. If I change it to left, you can see the checkbox and then the description of the field. So lots of different things you can do to alter the look of your screens. In addition to hiding, changing, we can also just move around. So I could drag and drop that all the way down here. That's not super useful. I'm going to put back. But dragging and dropping, you can actually just move and change the look of things. You can see we can, if I can get to that field, this is just a text. So you can see text field, the text is example. I've given it, you know, any of the formatting that I want, and I can have it, you know, the sizing and everything. So you can add just text fields if you want to add something to the screen that sort of reminds people to do something a certain way. Another thing that we can do on this screen is we can add user-defined fields. So I've clicked this button right here, which is our user-defined field button, add field button. And then I just create a section where I put that button in there. And you can see I've got that customer default warehouse. Let's pop it right in there. I made this field really huge, and because of that, the text came like way back there. So maybe I'm gonna like move it over. Let's see, I'm gonna move my column over just big enough so that hopefully, oh, I put it too far. But now once I can get a hold of it, I can drag it and drop it. And maybe I wanna make this field a little smaller because it's only 3 characters long. Why do I need to have it this big? We can do that, or we can maybe, you know, just type in a number. And now, well, this is the one thing about Customizer is that the drag and drop functionality is a little bit difficult sometimes. It's a little bit difficult to select the fields, but I think you guys kind of get the point. And I still have more content, so I want to keep this moving. So I go ahead and save the panel customizations. So when I clicked close, it's going to allow me to save. And then when I reopen customer maintenance, you can see we have that user-defined field. We have that text that exists there. This is our customizer. Another thing that you can do within Customizer is you can change the tab stops. So, and I shouldn't have closed that. When you're in your customer maintenance, you could say, I never use the address field, 3 field, like never. I want to remove that from my tab stops so that when you're doing data entry, when you click tab, it'll go from address to right down to zip code. Okay, so that is Customizer. Right. Let's talk a little bit about Paperless Office. So this is another tool that comes pretty standard with Sage. Everybody should have access to Paperless Office. It allows you to automatically save reports and registers and journals when you're printing. So you define the location that they get saved to. When you click the print button, whether you print it to a PDF or you actually print a paper copy, it's also going to save a PDF copy to a specific location that you've chosen ahead of time. You can also create PDFs of forms and have them automatically email to customers, vendors, or employees. So let's use the example again of sales order invoice. Let's say you want to make sure that you send invoices automatically to customers who have that already set up. So you would say, this customer has Paperless Office set up. They've agreed that, they want me to email them invoices whenever they're finished. When I click the print button, it will automatically send an email to that customer. Of course, there's some setup involved. If you guys are interested in this and you don't use it, give us a call. It's a lot more than I can get into on this, this meeting here. But one thing I did want to note is that with the 2019 version, they have updated this so that we have a lot more functionality for the automatic email. You can see down below here, I have the ability to change fonts and make things bold and, insert a logo. You can insert your signature. It's a normal email formatting that wasn't available in the earlier versions. The other thing that they've done is they've increased the variety of the merge fields that are available. So we actually have a client who the customer's PO number was an extremely important field that they needed in their emails. The customer PO number is only what the customer looks at, and that was just really, really important. With the 2019 version, we were able to set up and do the paperless emailing and save them just a ton of time because they were doing it manually previously. So anywhere you see these bracketed, these are merge fields. So it's going to take the document number, in this case, this would be the invoice number, directly from the system when generating that email. Is the very, very basics of paperless office. Again, it's a huge topic and I could get well more into it, but we've got a lot to cover. Normally, I wouldn't talk about 1099s in a presentation on tips and tricks, but there are some changes for 2020, and I'm trying to make sure that all of our clients are aware of these changes in whatever way I can. So I thought it would be useful to just cover what some of the changes for 2020 are with the 1099 forms. So in 2020, the 1099 NEC form, non-employee compensation form, replaces the 1099 miscellaneous form that used to be in box 7. So box 7 used to be non-employee compensation under that MISC form, and they've separated that out into its own form now. So super important when you're doing your filings, you know, late December, early January, that you have the correct form available to you if you do your calculations. If you do your calculations out of Sage, or if you actually create your forms out of Sage, print and mail them, or create your forms and actually e-file them using the 1099s in Sage. The new 1099 NEC form and the setup for that is available with the newer versions of Sage. So you have to be on at least version 2018 with product update 9 or greater, 2019 with product update 3 or greater, or the 2020 version, and just the base product and up from that has that new designation available. I've got a couple of screenshots here. You can see that the default form here, we've got non-employee compensation. This used to just be miscellaneous, interest, or dividend. Now they've added non-employee compensation. And under the history tab, we now have this form type, and then it gives us this for the calendar year. There is a utility available in Sage that will convert any of your 2020 data. It looks and it says, okay, this vendor, you know, has box 7 checked under the MISC form. They should be non-employee compensation type, and we're going to switch that over for you. It will also translate the history for you. So it's going to take and put that into the 1099 payment history, make it nice and easy for you so you don't have a whole lot of like data entry and changing that you have to do. If this is something that you guys do, if you put 1099 information into Sage, please give us a call so that we can help you as soon as possible. There may be third-party considerations that we have to take into mind here as you're doing an update to, you know, a product update. Will it be compatible? So we want to make sure that we address this as soon as possible so that we know where you're at for the new year. And it's not some major rush at New Year's when nobody wants to be dealing with this stuff. So there's my spiel on 1099s. Give us a call. I did want to cover here office templates. We're going to get into kind of some reporting stuff here. In Sage, you may notice in some screens, we've got this little Microsoft button, and that is going to give us access to templates in Office. In this example, we've got a sort of template letter. I believe I used the complaint letter here. So in this example, anywhere you see these arrows, these are merge fields. So it's going to take it directly from the database in Sage and enter the vendor name, the address, city, state, zip, etc. It's going to pull from your primary contact name. They're asking for a refund of whatever the last check amount is. So creating these Office templates, it's actually quite easy. You have availability to add whatever merge fields you want. You can put in your own logo. It can be on your own letterhead. And it can be a nice way for you to have a standard form that you would populate with Sage data and send out to customers or vendors. I've seen people use this where they have a form letter that they would send for people requesting terms. And it would say, thank you, blah, 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 so much for requesting terms. And these are the documents that we require. This is our process. Please contact us, blah, blah, blah. So lots of options for setting up these Office templates. Keep an eye out in the system for this little Microsoft button for the Windows button. We can also customize our standard reports. So there are standard reports in the system. We can customize these with Crystal reports. So if you are looking to customize, you should have the Crystal Reports Designer installed. If you don't, we can help you with that. That's a pretty fast process. But we can do things like adding simple fields. We can, go into the Crystal report and add a field that's related to this topic. We can change formatting. We can move fields around. We can get rid of stuff we don't want to see and make it a lot more streamlined. And the other thing that we can do is save print options. So in this example, we might only ever want to see standard orders and back orders. We don't want to see any of our quotes. We don't want to see master orders. And we would want to, change it. We're going to sort the report by sales order. If you save this, it will actually save those options for you the next time around. So you don't have to spend all of your time changing and clicking and, oh, remember, yep, I need to do this. So customizing standard reports, fairly simple, and definitely something, as a starting point for you if you have a report that's close. Let's see if we can use that, kind of leverage that into a report that does everything that you need. Of course, we also have just straight custom reporting, and we've got a session coming up later on. Justin is going to be teaching us about Business Insights Explorer. So if you're interested in more in-depth reporting, definitely check out that session. Business Insights Explorer is a great, great thing available in your Sage. We also have default settings. So let's say that you needed to enter a whole bunch of repeating orders in sales order entry with the same information over and over. It's always repeating. I always want it to come from warehouse 3, for example. And it's always the same ship via. You can go into your data entry screen, and we're going to look for this defaults button, and you would set and change your default values. Anytime you click to create a new order, it's going to use those default values for you. So that's a bit of a time saver if you have a lot of data entry that you need to do. We've got audit tracking. So let's talk a little bit about ways to find data in your system. In Sage, in customer, vendor, or item maintenance screens, we have the ability to turn on audit tracking. This will allow us to see who's made changes, who's created new records, who's deleted records, what was the record that they deleted, what was the thing that they changed, when did they do this. So you're going to turn this on in the options of each of your modules. It's going to say audit tracking, and you're going to also check the box that says track additions in details. This is going to, if you select that box to say track this in detail, what it's going to do is show you who made the change, when did they make the change, and what was the change that they made. This can be really helpful if you have some sort of mystery problem, right? That people keep doing something and you can't figure out who's doing it and what are they doing. This can help you track that down and correct that behavior. And sorry, and this is on the other screen. An additional way that you can do that is if you're in an order entry screen, if you right click, you will see the system info button. So when you click the system info button, it will tell you who created the order, when was it created, or who made a change to that order and when did they make the change, who was the last person who edited the order. So that is checking your data. Another way that we can check our data is in our activity log. This is going to be a bit more high level. So if you're in the activity log, it's going to show you who logged in, when did they log in, did they enter the correct password or did they enter the wrong password? Was there an error in the system that happened in the background, and what was that error? Was there some kind of conversion or update that happened? Again, this is going to be system-wide system information for you. Newer versions have a lot more ability to filter this data, purge this data, give you more information about the list that you have here, and filter that list down, make it a little bit easier to read, because as you can see, it can go on forever and ever and ever. So that is the activity log. And then the last bits that I want to do here are talking about some common utilities, some common errors that you might see, and how you can actually make those corrections in your system. Now, I want to preface this with, I wouldn't share anything here that, you know, really can screw your system up. Obviously, if you're running utilities in the system, we need to be cautious, we need to be careful, we need to be making sure that we're reading the screens fully and understanding what they're doing. But the things that I'm going to share here have relatively, you know, like low chance of making a mistake, of making any kind of error here. If you are seeing something more complicated, reach out to us. If you're not comfortable with doing any of these things, reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you with this. But we also really like to empower our clients to help themselves with common issues that they may run into. So the first of these that I want to share with you is the rebuild sort utilities. So maybe your inventory screen shows an incorrect quantity on sales order or purchase order. You know, you see the quantity that it reads. Let me pull the item screen up here and I'll show you where I'm talking about. Obviously, my system doesn't have the error, so it's not super helpful. But let's see down here, it says we've got 3 on sales order. But if we come over to our orders screen and we look at our sales order, there aren't actually 3 on order for that warehouse. There's 2. And somehow, somewhere, the system has miscalculated or gotten confused about this calculated field over here. Okay. So what we can do is use our rebuild sort utility to correct that. Rebuild sort is going to check calculated fields within Sage and make sure that it recalculates and like corrects that information. You need to do this when users are out of the system. You can't have people in while you're trying to rebuild these sort files. You need to make sure that you're only rebuilding sort files and not key files. There are 2 different rebuild utilities. Make sure you're selecting that sort file. Better yet, restrict access to that rebuild key files in your role maintenance. You want to make sure that you rebuild the orders in the modules in proper order. So you would want to rebuild your purchase order and sales order first, right? Because that's going to be the base of information. Then you would rebuild your inventory. Then you would rebuild AP and AR. Then you would rebuild general ledger. So go in the proper order to rebuild those files. And you want to make sure you recalculate any of the additional data that pops up when you run this. So great example here on our slide. Do you want to recalculate vendor balances in the vendor master file? Go ahead and click yes. You should be recalculating all the things that it wants you to recalculate here. I do want to point out the little warning. So this is used to rebuild module sort files, which affect most queries, lists, and selection boxes. Rebuilding sort files will not correct data corruption errors in data files. So again, like I said, this is a utility that helps you recalculate some of those calculated list fields. It's not going to correct data errors. It's not going to do any of that for you. So low risk, because it's just going to take whatever's in the system and recalculate it for you. So when should you run the rebuild sort files? You want to run this for sure when the information is wrong, when you notice that there's a discrepancy between what it says is on sales order and what's actually on sales order. That's a very logical way to put it. Now, you might want to run this monthly or quarterly. If you have a lot of data in the system, you might want to make sure that all of these transactions are calculating up to the correct thing. So it's not a bad idea to do this monthly or quarterly. And especially if you have a high amount of data. So if you're doing just a ton of sales orders or a ton of purchase orders, have a ton of inventory transactions, the more data you have, the more chance you have of having a discrepancy. Okay. Again, you probably are going to want to restrict this to one person. So I would restrict the access to this in your role maintenance so that you can have a dedicated person who you trust, who isn't going to get flustered, isn't going to get worried about doing this wrong. They know what they're doing. Rebuild the sort files and move on, be ready. So the next one I want to show you is the AR clear payments today. So this is a really common one that we see, and it's a really easy one to fix. You may have an invoice that shows as unpaid in your customer screen, but it doesn't show up in the cash receipt screen. So as you're doing your cash receipts, you know that this invoice is unpaid. It shows you that when you look in the customer, when you look in the invoice record, but it's not showing up when you need it for cash receipts. This utility corrects an issue where when you're entering cash receipts, there's a field called paid today that, let's say you enter a cash receipt, you put that invoice in, it's going to say, yep, I'm paying this one. So that invoice is no longer available. And two different people can't select and pay the same invoice at the same time. It reserves it. It says, I'm not going to let anybody else pay this because I've already said I'm going to pay it on this cash receipt. So sometimes we make data entry mistakes. We delete that invoice. We delete a whole batch. That paid today field ends up staying checked and it shouldn't. This utility is going to correct that for you. So you need to run this when users are out of the system. You need to run this when cash receipts are not in progress. So you want to, make sure that cash receipts are not in progress. And it's a very easy one to get to. File, run, and the utility is ARWAR4. Okay, so when we click this, and it popped up on the other screen, it's going to give us this warning. It's going to clear and recalculate payments today in the AR open invoice file. Do you want to proceed? You would click yes. It would run through. It would take care of everything that it needs to do. We don't need to do that now, so I'm not going to do it. But file, run, ARWAR4. Now, in upcoming versions, they haven't released this yet, but they are adding this utility, ARWAR4, to the actual accounts receivable menu. So it'll just be under utilities and it'll be clear payments today, as its own utility. You don't have to go to this file run and remember ARWAR4. Although if you run it as many times as I have, you will never forget ARWAR4. And so the last one that I want to cover here are paperless office errors. This is extremely common. We see this all the time. And the reason for that is Windows 10. Windows 10 updates tend to knock out the paperless office converter for Sage 100. And that's a reason that I wanted to show this utility to folks to fix that, because it just happens so often. It's so frequent. So again, we're going to go up to that file, run. And the utility is PL_advanced options _UI. And I know that's, a lot. You don't have to remember that. We've got the slideshow for this. I'm happy to share the slideshow with anybody who would like it. But when you pull this up, so to describe what that PL_advanced options UI, PL stands for paperless office. This is the advanced options screen, and the UI is for user interface. So this is the user interface screen for our paperless office advanced options. We want to make sure that use lock file and automatically install converter are unchecked. You do not want to have those boxes checked. So if you go in, first thing, uncheck them, go ahead and save. Want to make sure we get those unchecked and save that. Once that's done, we can test our converter. We would click test. Gotta love Windows 10. It looks like we're going to be able to correct the actual paperless error that I have here. And as much as this seemed, I did not stage this, I swear to God. So this is the common error that you're going to get. Printer not activated, error code 30. You're going to get this error when you are updating registers, if you use Paperless Office to save your registers. When you're printing forms, if you use Paperless to send emails to your customers. Or vendors or employees, anybody. So printer not activated, error code 30. We just click OK. We're going to get another error here saying, oh, the operating system command failed. Like bad, bad, bad. It's not that bad, but we're going to click end. We're going to come back into our file run PL_advanced options UI. And the process for fixing this is just super simple. We uninstall our converter. You can see it's uninstalling. Okay, now he says the PDF converter is not installed and has not been registered. So now, without even having to exit, we just install the converter. It's installing a printer object for us, getting it all set. That might take a moment. Okay, and now it tells us the PDF converter is installed correctly. I'm going to go ahead and test it. And that it's just given me a thing saying, oh, I'm going to test this, Paperless Office, Acrobat Reader. And when we get a positive test, like when it comes through and it tests correct, we're going to get this page. Congratulations, our PDF converter has been properly installed. So that was kind of a fun happenstance. I actually got to fix the error on my machine, as you watched. So again, this is really, really common with Windows 10. We just see it all the time. And something that we like to make sure folks know how to do on their own. So that it's not this emergency, oh my God, I can't update anything. What's going on? What's this error code 30? This doesn't make any sense. Don't worry, this is your Paperless Office. We are more than happy to help you. So if you are feeling like this is, not something you want to deal with, you can give us a call. We can walk you through this. We can just do it for you if you don't want to deal with it. But it is, because it's such a common error, I find that this is a really nice one to have available. So, all right. I have talked a lot, and now I guess I'd like to hear from you guys, give you guys some time to ask me some questions, but I am going to drink some kind of cold coffee at this point. So. Kelly, are there any questions in the queue?
We did have one question. Does daily transaction register get to paperless? So even though we don't see the daily transaction register with automatic posting, we can still go to paperless to see it if necessary?
That's a great question. And I believe the answer is yes. Because this is such a newer feature, I haven't actually tested that yet. So let me test that and make sure that is the case, that it would still go to paperless. But I believe the answer to that is yes. And I'm making a note.
And that, let's see here. We will be sending this presentation to everybody who attended today. So if you registered for this, this will come to you in an email later on today. Let's see. Can you change the default name of files to go to paperless?
Yes. The default name of files to go to paperless. Make sure I understand this. So if we come, for example, to our journal and register maintenance, come Um, I thought you could do this, but maybe not with journals and registers, but with forms. Yes. With forms, we do have the option. We can choose our PDF file name from this dropdown. We can do our full description of this document, which includes dates, document number, or just have it by document number. It's not a free format thing, so you can't make that change there, but you can choose between those two options.
All right.
And if that is something that you know, like say you wanted that for your journal and register, there is a site that takes Sage 100 suggestions. I believe it's called Sage Ideas. It's been a while since I've been to it, but Sage actually takes a lot of those suggestions and incorporates them into new versions. That would be a great suggestion to see, did somebody else already suggest this? And if not, you know, write it down.
And thank you, Sherry and Shelby, for answering that as well. They both confirmed that the daily transaction register does go to paperless.
Perfect. Thank you for confirming.
They use it that way.
I was actually, that was my plan. I was going to ask a client who I knew set that up, like, does that? I'm pretty sure it does, but like, just be sure. So thank you. Thank you both.
All right, let's see here. Does manufacturing make to stock close listing go to paperless? If not, can they elect to have it do so?
That is a great question. I would have to look that one up. So let me play with
I believe it does.
Thank you, Joe, our manufacturing expert, Joe.
I was hoping.
Yes.
Just had that question
Nancy.
come up last week. So you don't have to be smart all the time. You just have to be lucky timing, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, if you're ever curious about what you can send to Paperless Office, when you're in your system, come over here to your journal and register maintenance or to your report maintenance and just kind of go through the options. So what's the module? Say payroll. These are all the different reports that you can, you know, save using Paperless. You can choose to save all of them this way whenever you do it, or like these are the ones that are available. So I always suggest get your fingers in there, like start playing around with it.
All right, those are all the questions, and Nancy uses it that way as well. Thank you, Nancy.
Great.
Excellent. Well, that is everything. So don't feel that you have to stop asking questions. By all means, we'll send out our contact information, Jesse's contact information. Ask her questions. Oh, hold on. Jesse talked about how you are able to put multiple POs on one invoice. Can you show that?
I have to switch versions because this is brand new for 2020 and I didn't have everything. I wanted to make sure I had everything set up in 2019. So let me see if I can switch. I will be honest that I have not played around with it, but I'm going to assume that it's very similar to the PO. So hang on one second. So the 2020
While
version,
Jesse's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, while you're looking this up, I wanted to remind everybody that there is a business partner hall today. It is open on our website. If you click, go to v-bcc.com, right on our homepage, we have a link to the business partner hall where we have a lot of our preferred vendors there. There's also a scavenger hunt that you can take part in to enter for some great prizes and gift cards donated by our vendors.
So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that I have two records that can be combined. There are specific criteria where it has to be the same. And usually, at least for a sales order, that's required date. And I think purchase order number. I'm just gonna skip that one. See if I can create two quick here. Do it on the fly. All right. So if we come to our receipt of goods entry, I'm going to create a new receipt, and I'm going to select a purchase order number. So I'm going to select one of these 2 purchase orders that I just created, this 132. And you can see now I've got a plus button next to my receipt. So if we click the plus button, it's going to show us additional orders that can be combined. So in this example, we've got not only this other one that I just put in, it's got a couple of other ones. So obviously the order date or the receipt date is not the criteria. I'd have to look up and see what the purchase order combination criteria is. But just to give you a little taste here, it gives you a full screen when you click that plus button of what are the other orders that I can combine onto this one receipt. So if I click OK, purchase order now says multiple. And if we come to our lines tab, you can see it's got both of those lines that we had from the separate purchase orders. So thanks for the question, keeping me on my toes.
All right, that looks like all of, oh, hold on. Can you, I know I keep, can you invoice multiple POs or SOs together with 2020?
I'm not sure. So you can invoice or do receipt of invoice, receipt of goods on purchase orders together. You can also do the same thing with sales order invoices. So you would, it's going to look exactly the same when you enter your invoice. You're going to have the sales order number, and then you would have the plus button, which would allow you to combine multiple sales orders onto one invoice. Purchase order and sales order are separate modules, so you can't really combine purchase and sales order together. I don't know if I understood that correctly, but.
All right, I'm scared to say there's no more questions.
Well, if y'all just want to hang around and
like
talk,
I said,
we've got another 6 minutes. So no, I'm just so glad to see so many names and faces that I recognize on here. And really thank you all for attending. I hope, you know, at the very least you took away one cool thing from this, hopefully a lot more than one, but you know, I try to cover a wide range of things that might be useful for folks. And I'm missing seeing all of you in person this year. So it's nice to see a few of your faces on the camera here, but we look forward to, you know, hopefully next year kicking off again with an in-person, and I'm really excited that we had the opportunity to do this, to do the virtual webinar and you know, connect, or virtual user conference, and connect with you all in this way.
And it's not too late to register for the rest of the sessions. We have another one coming up in this afternoon, questions and answers. We have BIE later this evening, I'm going to say late afternoon. And then tomorrow, Joe is presenting, our manufacturing expert, in the afternoon. You don't want to miss that. We also have inventory best practices in the afternoon and Sage Intelligence in the morning. So lots of cool things coming up. And don't forget the Business Partner Hall, v-bcc.com, and click there's a link right on the front page there. And with that, Jesse, thank you so much as always. It is always a pleasure listening to you with these tips and tricks. You do such a great job, and thank you to all the attendees for coming and joining us in our new normal. I hate saying that, but
for now,
fits.
So, and I see we got a chat here from Nancy saying, I'm also glad you did this. And Nancy, you are one of our user conference hardcore attendees, and so I'm glad you were able to come, and I'm glad you enjoyed it as well.
Thank you, everybody, and I hope you all have a great day, and maybe we'll see you in a couple more sessions.
All right, great job,
have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.